As they say in Korean, 안녕하세요. It has been over 30 years since I had the pleasure of sitting in your seats. And when I think about what has happened in the business world, my professional career, change has definitely been a big part of that. And under the leadership of Dean Joss, I'm very pleased to say that the mission of the business school now is, of course, to change lives, change organizations, and change the world. And so in terms of my remarks today, I would like to talk about the theme of change. We'll talk about business strategy. But I would say that, again, when I was going to the business school, I did not think that 30-plus years later, I'd be leading an automotive joint venture based in Seoul, South Korea. But as you'll see from the title of my remarks, GM Daewoo Auto and Technology Company is a real game changer within a very fast and changing GM. And I'm sure my comments are going to prompt a lot of questions, as I said, from you regarding global business strategy, global management, but also the fact that General Motors is in the news quite a bit this week. I'll be prepared to respond to questions about the industry or GM. Let me set the stage by indicating very succinctly, the global auto industry is in crisis. The global economic slowdown has impacted countries and industries around the world. Probably, in addition to the financial sector, none more than the auto sector. If you look at global industry sales for the industry in 2009, we're forecasting 57 million units. That's down more than 20% from 2007. And with global automotive capacity at about 80 million units, you can see that major restructuring is required across the entire industry. As a result, you've seen the headlines. One of the U.S. Big Three may go bankrupt. You've seen Toyota announcing their first loss in 70 years. Nissan cutting 20,000 jobs. And auto parts companies being on the verge of failing. As a result, governments around the world are taking action, whether here in the U.S. providing support, in Europe, South America. Even, unfortunately, some governments trying to protect their local industries are raising tariffs, making international business that much more difficult, again, in the interest of trying to support their home industries. Now, with that as background, one of the first things that I need to do is to address some of the myths that are currently circulating among maybe some of the critics of GM. And I think this is important because this needs to set the stage for what I'm going to share with you. Myth number one, GM doesn't make vehicles that people want to buy. Well, as shown, GM has averaged 9 million global vehicle sales a year for the past 2 years. We did outsell Toyota in 16 of the top 20 markets. And importantly, we are growing very aggressively in some of the emerging markets. As noted, we are the fastest growing brand in Russia. Our joint ventures in China are number one, and we have a leadership position in Brazil. And I'm pleased to say that GM Daewoo is playing a very important part of that growth. Myth number two, GM doesn't build quality vehicles. Well, again, third-party assessment, the Chevrolet Malibu was rated the top quality midsize product in the United States versus some of the well-known competitors. The GM brands of Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac rate higher in overall quality than some of the European and Asian brands shown here. And again, in another very important emerging market of India, GM is ranked number one in terms of quality in the very important mini and small and their SUV market. And again, I'm very pleased to say some of these products are the result of GM Daewoo. Here's a topic in the news quite a bit. GM doesn't sell fuel-efficient vehicles. And a vehicle that has been criticized by a lot of people who don't know the industry, full-size pickup trucks, General Motors, Chevrolet, and GMC products rate higher in fuel economy than the brands that have recently come to this market, Toyota and Nissan specifically, who have actually built plants here in the U.S. to sell their pickup trucks. GM offers 19 vehicles or models that get better than 30 mile per gallon fuel economy, which is more than any other manufacturer. And finally, GM offers more hybrid models, electric hybrid models, than Nissan and Honda. So I wanted to set the facts straight because you probably have either heard or read about some of these points. But really, those comments are really intended to just paint the backdrop for GM's global strategy. And I'm going to use this construct to explain what we are doing. First, we have 4 key strategic priorities of product excellence. Second, building strong multiple brands. A focus on the emerging markets, as I'll share with you the fact that most of the growth in the industry is going to occur in these markets over the next 5 to 10 years. And the importance that GM has placed on fuel-efficient, advanced propulsion technology. I also want to indicate that for some reason around the perimeter is some language that I cannot read. Something got lost in the electronic translation that should say Global Matrix Management Structure or System. And it's rather interesting that for some reason that was not captured by the electronics, because I'm going to use the structure to explain how structure follows strategy and how the structure that we have in place at GM is enabling us to pursue these 4 key areas of priorities, and then also our importance on our core values.
It says it, but in very fancy letters.
Well, as I said, I'm not quite sure how that ended up being interpreted that way. So let me start with the Global Matrix Management System. And as I said, I'm starting here with structure because I think it's actually going to be easier for you to understand how the strategies that we put in place are being enabled by this structure. We have 4 regions shown there at the top where we run the business on an operations basis. These 4 regions are given the responsibility to know the market, to find the products that are required, the customer requirements, and to drive the revenue growth and the bottom line results of the business. However, we have a matrix because we have global functions as shown. And these global functions cut across the entire organization in the areas of engineering, manufacturing, finance, etc. And these functions are responsible for ensuring that we have deep functional knowledge and expertise. They drive common processes and systems, and they drive the cost element of the business in terms of making sure that we are cost competitive. Now, within this structure, GM Daewoo falls within the Asia-Pacific organization. And as I indicated, I'm going to weave how GM Daewoo is playing a critical part of helping GM pursue the strategies that I've just summarized. Now, GM Daewoo Auto and Technology Company, we are based in Seoul, South Korea. We were formed in October 2002, so we are only 6 years old. We were formed from the former bankrupt Daewoo Company. We purchased the selected assets of that company. And as noted, the ownership structure, we are a joint venture. GM owns 51%. But we have 2 other key partners. Our partners, Suzuki and Shanghai Automotive Industry Corp., respectively with 11 and 10%, as well as the Korean Development Bank and the Korean creditors make up the remaining 28%. So we are the majority owner. Now, we cover all elements of the value chain from design through engineering, manufacturing, marketing, and sales. And we have in place about 2 million units of capacity, split between 1 million units of vehicle capacity, and then also all the components for a vehicle that we actually package up in kits that we then export overseas to be built in local manufacturing plants. And this is sometimes because of local content requirements in some of these countries. But as noted, annual sales of about $14 billion, and we have 20,000 employees in Korea. So let me start first with the first strategic priority of product excellence. I know everyone is familiar with the expression in real estate, it's location, location, location. Well, in our business, it's product, product, product. Automotive companies win or lose depending on the competitiveness of their products in terms of design, performance, and quality. And I'm very pleased to indicate this past year, as GM has really focused on ensuring we're bringing the right products to market, we have received some very prestigious awards here in the U.S., North America, as well as Europe, in some very key segments. The mid-size market, the crossover market, as well as the luxury markets. Now I'm going to link this to this global management structure I just talked about. This is the horizontal cutting across the regions. In the area of product development, we have a common global development process. But different from our competitors, say Toyota, who has one vehicle development center based in Japan, General Motors has 5 architectural development centers placed strategically around the world. One in the United States, but then also one in Korea at GM Daewoo. And what we have done is we've assigned responsibility for product development based on the expertise of those organizations to develop those types of products. So, for example, at GM Daewoo, we have specialized in mini and small vehicle development. So we have the responsibility for developing mini and small cars for GM's global operations around the world using a common global development system that is the same whether it's in Korea, US, or Germany, or anywhere in the world. And this is allowing us to develop products faster, at lower cost, and higher quality. Now, an example of the new products we're developing in Korea for sale around the world, these 3 vehicles were our mini concept vehicles. Some of you might have seen these. They made the tour around the United States and around the world last year, the auto show circuit. And they received rave reviews from automotive press and consumers alike. And I'm pleased to say these were the concept names. We are going to bring the vehicle called the Beat to the market. We are going into production in Korea this summer. And then this vehicle will be exported around the world. And we announced just this past month we'll be bringing this vehicle to the United States. What's important is that this vehicle is, yes, a low-cost product. But as you can see by its design, it's fun, it's fashionable. It is going to break the mold of what people think of mini cars. And I'm very pleased to say in terms of fuel efficiency, this is just a regular gasoline-powered vehicle. It'll get 40 to 50 miles per gallon fuel economy. And the other products shown there are future concept vehicles that we may bring to market. So we are developing these types of products at GM Daewoo using a common process used by GM around the world for export around the world. And we're extremely proud of this particular product. Now, the second area of focus is building strong, powerful brands. And GM, again, is different than our competitors, where we believe we have the ability to go to market with multiple brands. We have 2 core brands, a base brand, which is Chevrolet, and our luxury brand, which is Cadillac. And these 2 brands are offered around the world. But we also supplement those 2 brands with local brands or regional brands. For example, in Germany or Europe, we sell the Opel brand. And these brands either have significant history, they probably came from companies formed within that country, and we have integrated them into GM. For example, in Australia, we use the GM Holden brand. Again, historically strong brand in Australia. Now, I will indicate, yes, GM has been accused of having too many brands. So we had recently announced that several of our brands within our portfolio are going to be eliminated or sold. And we've indicated that those brands are Hummer. We are in the process of potentially selling that brand. Saab, as it turns out, when this slide was put together, we indicated it was under strategic review. Today, in Sweden, Saab did file for restructuring protection under Swedish law. And over the next 6 to 9 months, they will develop a restructured plan which would make Saab an independent company of GM, probably in 2010. And then Saturn, another brand that we've used here in North America, we are looking at some alternatives for that brand. Now, how does GM Daewoo fit into this? Well, as I've described, we are a significant part of GM's global operations. We export from Korea to 150 countries around the world. And we export under the brands of Chevrolet, Suzuki, Pontiac, Buick. Products around the world are actually products that we have developed in Korea. Now, I also indicated, other than exporting completely assembled products, we export kits of components we call CKD or SKD. These are either completely or semi-knockdown kits. And we export these to plants. Now, these plants are strategically located because these plants are in the emerging markets. You'll see in Russia, Central Eastern Europe, other parts of Asia, also Latin America. And these kits of components are assembled there, and usually we follow that approach because of either tariffs or local content requirements or cost reasons. So as you can see, GM Daewoo plays an important part of supporting GM's growth, not just the products we sell in Korea, but around the world. We also, in addition to providing the product, are working in terms of brand development. And I'm sure you're all studying the 4 Ps of marketing and understanding what's required for a strong brand and a strong marketing strategy. Well, in addition to the right product, we are working on many innovative marketing initiatives. For example, fuel economy is extremely important to all of us around the world. We have ultimate drive challenges where we have real customers driving our products versus the competition to evaluate fuel economy. We use brand theme lounges in train stations, shopping malls, again, to communicate the brand that we offer. We're big supporters of motorsports, and we use a variety of media attention events for our new product launches as well as some of our sales promotions. And this is just some of the activities that we have, for example, in Korea. The third area is the emerging markets. And I've mentioned this several times throughout my remarks thus far. The keys to success here are noted. The emerging markets require product concepts that are much lower cost, usually because of the affordability issue. The developed markets of U.S. and Western Europe require products of a much higher specification than some of these other markets. We have to modify these vehicles to meet the local requirements, either for driving conditions, road conditions, or different safety and emission requirements. We use low-cost manufacturing and distribution because, again, trying to reduce the cost of producing these vehicles and distributing these vehicles, again, to be competitive. Now, I also mentioned that we have many strategic alliances. And these alliances, for example, in China, are required because the Chinese government has indicated any non-Chinese company going into China must form a joint venture with a local Chinese company, 50-50 venture. In other cases, we link up with local partners, either because of the local partner's history or their knowledge of the markets. And finally, preempting the competition, being fast to market, first to market, is absolutely critical to win here. This is a chart maybe you have seen which looks at vehicle purchases around the world based on the number of vehicles per 1,000 people and GDP per capita. And you can see the developed countries in the automobile industry represent about 56% of the total industry. However, emerging markets are 44% of the industry and growing rapidly. And as these emerging markets move up the economic ladder in terms of their local economies, the number of vehicle purchases is going to rise dramatically. And that's why there is so much emphasis being placed on, yes, protecting the developed markets, but also securing a strong foothold in these emerging markets. GM Daewoo, again, is playing a very important role. If you look at our first year of operation, we sold about 340,000 units. This past year in 2008, 1.9 million units. That's a 6-time increase. And almost 80% of our volume is in these very important emerging markets around the world. And we've achieved that success by investing $6 billion over the past 6 years in new products, new facilities, etc. And, of course, our objective is to continue this growth. However, the global economic slowdown has obviously slowed things considerably. The last key strategic area I wanted to talk about was advanced propulsion. Here at GM, we believe on developing a strategy based on energy diversity and having multiple solutions. You're probably aware there are many different fuels other than gasoline. LPG, CNG, diesel, biofuel. One of the areas GM has placed a high priority on is the development of low-cost ethanol from non-food sources. This is from any carbon-containing material, solid waste, and we have several joint ventures in this area, which we believe will be part of the long-term solution. Hybrid vehicles, and for us, going beyond the current state of hybrid to extended range vehicles, the Chevrolet Volt is an example that I'm going to briefly talk about in just a minute. And then longer term, fuel cell vehicles. Now, these vehicles are obviously for the next decade, and we have a project called Project Drive Away, where we have 100 vehicles in the cities of Los Angeles, Washington, and New York. And these vehicles are being driven by real customers, and we're getting real-world feedback. These are fuel cell vehicles that, again, will help us make sure we know what's required for the success long term. The extended range electric vehicle, this is the Chevrolet Volt. We are bringing this vehicle to market in the United States later next year. It has generated quite a bit of excitement because on a battery-only charge, you can drive 40 miles. And this is important because 3/4 of Americans will only drive their commute inside of 40 miles every day. So this vehicle you will be able to drive without the use or the consumption of any gasoline or any other fuel. Now we say extended range because we also have an extended electric generator system on the vehicle. So after you use up the 40 miles of charge with the battery, this electric generator will allow you to go, if necessary, another 30 miles. And there is a small engine on the vehicle. However, what's important is that this product competes very effectively in terms of product specs to any mid-sized car you drive today. Critically, the cost is only 2 cents per mile. This is 1/6 the cost of gasoline when gasoline is $3.5 a gallon. And we are going to take this concept and apply it not just to mainstream vehicles, but this past month we showed a Cadillac luxury concept product, the Converge, which will also potentially come off this technology platform. Now, to put this vehicle into perspective, we thought it would be helpful for you to see how much energy it consumes. And you're very familiar with the electrical appliances shown here. So as you can see, driving a Volt in terms of for a year, it will consume less energy than your air conditioning, home heating system, refrigerator, water heater, etc. So this is a true game changer in terms of the automobile of the future. And finally, the last area I wanted to talk about was our core values. We place a high priority on our external customers, obviously the people who buy our vehicles, but also our internal team members, emphasizing teamwork, our external business partners and communities, where we place a high priority on community involvement and goodwill. And then all of these strategies, an area that I very much emphasize is excellence in execution is required in order for the strategies really to pay off. Another key part of what we are doing, because unions are a part of our business, is working to ensure that we have very constructive, positive labor management relations. Within Korea, we have forged a pretty positive partnership with our union. You're very familiar with the United Auto Workers in this country and other unions in Europe. We believe if we are to prosper and succeed in the future, we've got to have a strong working relationship with the union. And this is an area that we at GM Daewoo have made considerable progress. And finally, for all of us, in the case of GM Daewoo, we are a foreign company, but we are part of the Korean economy. And so we place a very high priority to integrate within the Korean society and culture with a variety of social welfare activities. And in addition to being personally rewarding, it's obviously a lot of fun. So in summary, what I wanted to do to prompt some questions and discussion was to share with you how GM is changing. It may not be the company that you think of or you read about in the newspaper. I've tried to dispel some of the myths that are out there, but also describe for you the global strategy. And importantly, how GM Daewoo, the company that I had in Korea, is very much supporting the GM global business strategy. We are building high-quality, very compelling products. Some of the new products we brought to market, we believe, are examples of that. We're moving very fast to take advantage of the emerging markets, in many cases beating our competition there. We're working on a variety of, we believe, next-generation technology in terms of green vehicles. And as I've just concluded, we're working very closely with all of our partners, not just the union, but all of our business partners, to ensure that we are globally competitive. So we are in the process of creating a new General Motors. And I'm very pleased to say that GM Daewoo is playing a very big part of making that a reality. Thank you very much. Or again, as they say in Korean, 감사합니다. I'd like to open it up for questions and comments. I think I gave you enough to think about. But as I described, I wanted to link a combination of business strategy with structure, as well as give you a little flavor for the company that I currently lead. Yes?
감사합니다. I'm Korean. So I have actually two questions. One is for from the beginning when you did the JV, it seems like a tough time because one of the support for the auto bailout is they're claiming that if once the company go to the bankruptcy, it's hard to convince the consumer to buy like your car. But there was a big conglomerate in Korea, but they obviously go to the bankruptcy. But you form the JV with Daewoo. So how do you make it happen, like to become a successful company? That's my first question. And second question is, even though your JV is successful because your parent company is really suffered in the States and across the different country, it seems like GM, they have a tough time in these days because they're asking money for the Korean government and Korean government say no, and you're asking more money from the Korean Development Bank. So what's your next plan for GM Daewoo? Are you thinking like in terms of like organic, like structure? Are you thinking like spin off, or are you thinking like selling more stake to the like Korean bank, or what's your next step?
Good. Very good. First question had to do with, as I described, GM Daewoo was formed from the assets of a former Korean company, a very big conglomerate in Korea, Daewoo. They went bankrupt as a result of the Asian financial crisis of the late 1990s. We went in, purchased selected assets, and as I've described, significantly have grown the company. Much of that growth has occurred outside of Korea. More than 90% of our business is exports. And as I hopefully described in my presentation, we're exporting to 150 countries with high quality, very good products, well accepted products. In Korea, there is a lot of memory of the former Daewoo company. And so one of the things we've been working on is with the sales and marketing initiatives is to describe how this is a new company with new products. I mentioned that we have invested $6 billion into our operation for new products, new plants, new design engineering centers, and we're sharing that with the Korean people to tell them that we are in Korea building a Korean company for Koreans, with Koreans, and hopefully over time they will realize, and hopefully with the products we offer, as I said, product is number one requirement. People will come to us. We actually find ourselves in a difficult situation. The home team is Hyundai and Kia. They own more than 70 to 80% of the market. And so we are a small slice of that market today, about 10%. So as you can see, there is one major car company, Hyundai Kia, who basically monopolized the Korean market. And through the actions that I've described, some of the corporate social responsibility initiatives, the activities that we go out into the community where some of our employees live and work, we're trying to further demonstrate our commitment to Korea. So those are the things we're working on, but it does start with great new products linked with all of the things we're doing. We are reinvesting in Korea, and I think more and more people are understanding that. The second part of your question had to do with GM Daewoo is a part of General Motors. There is a lot of publicity right now because GM Corporation has approached the U.S. government as well as governments around the world for financial support. In Korea, we do run independent of General Motors. We are a part of General Motors, but we have to self-fund. So as we have generated business and generated our returns, as I've just described, we've reinvested those funds into our operations. Because the financial crisis has basically closed the credit markets, not just to General Motors or GM Daewoo, but other companies as well, we have approached the Korean government just like I noted on my first slide. The European auto companies have approached the European governments, etc. And we've asked the Korean government for financial support to bridge this period over the next couple years, because we have a very aggressive new vehicle development plan, and we have investment in each of our plants. We have 20,000 people we employ in Korea. In Korea, you cannot lay people off. These are lifetime jobs. So we have a situation where, working with the government, obviously job security is very much a part of the economic culture there. The only way we can support those jobs is if we can support the investment and the new vehicles and the new business. So the approach we've taken here recently with the government is to describe that we are no different than other Korean companies who also are asking for support, as well as other auto companies around the world that are asking for support. And it is to bridge the next couple years. Otherwise, we'd have to significantly scale back our business. So at this point in time, we've gone to the banks as well as the government to provide us the necessary financial assistance. Hopefully, we'll receive some positive response within the next couple months. Good question from a person who is very familiar with Korea. Yes.
I was interested to hear about the new Volt that's coming out, and that the fact product specifications will be similar to existing sort of products in the market, the big car size. I know it hasn't been released, but can you say anything around price? Will you price for similar manner, or will you try and reflect the difference in economy by charging more? And if so, how do you expect to take up to the consumers paying more for a riskier product because they're not sure about how to drive it?
And this is something that all automotive consumers need to understand. The automotive technologies that we are developing to become more fuel efficient and greener, all these technologies come at a significant cost increase. And these costs are obviously extremely high until you develop the economies of scale and through volume and production drive those costs down to what is probably a more appropriate premium. So when you look at hybrid vehicles that are on the road today, most, if not all, of these vehicles do not generate a profit. The costs are extremely high. This particular product, as I said, it's a breakthrough product. It goes beyond traditional hybrid vehicles that you're familiar with today. Today's hybrid vehicles have an electric battery that supplements a conventional engine. And so during low driving speeds, the electric battery, but during normal driving, the regular engine is consuming fuel, gasoline, etc. Now, through this combination, you get better fuel economy. But as I described, what is so powerful about the Chevy Volt is that you could drive only using the battery for this 40-mile commute, and only if you drive beyond that, kick in the use of some fuel like gasoline to drive this generator. Now, there is a significant cost. Many governments have gone to the approach of saying, in the interest of green and getting more consumers to purchase these vehicles, they offer tax incentives or purchase incentives. And for example, some of the hybrids on the market today, you do receive a rebate or a tax incentive from the government. This type of product would similarly be eligible and would require a tax incentive. This product isn't on the market yet today, so I'm not in a position to give you what the ultimate cost would be to a consumer. But hopefully, between the higher cost of the technology, along with some incentives from the government to purchase a vehicle, you get into a price range which is affordable for most people. This particular product is not a small car. The Chevy Volt is a mid-size car. So you have to realize this vehicle is able to take your family, and it is a regular mid-size type car. I showed you the specifications in terms of performance, acceleration, range, etc. So we haven't finalized the price. One of the interesting concepts is that the battery pack. We are looking at the intriguing concept of you buy the vehicle, but you lease the battery pack. And in other words, you make like a monthly payment for this battery pack, similar to the way you buy a vehicle today. Along with the vehicle, you don't buy a lifetime supply of gasoline, right? Every week you go to the gas station and buy gasoline. So we're looking at this intriguing concept of you buy a vehicle, and in this particular case, the propulsion is basically the battery pack. And as I described, the cost to operate, electricity cost, is very, very modest. Okay, it's not significant versus the cost of gasoline. So I'm giving you a long explanation to say we're going to try to position this product. It'll probably be at a higher cost than some of the hybrid vehicles on the market today. But depending on the government incentive that is offered, hopefully it'll be at a price point that people will find attractive. Yes?
How will leadership be different post this crisis in terms of risk-taking, in terms of planning for business growth? Do you think this crisis will have a long-lasting impact on the way businesses are planned and managed?
The question around how is the current crisis, financial crisis, impacting the way we think about our business strategies, it has a very significant impact because, and I was having some conversation earlier today, This financial crisis is broader and deeper than anything we've experienced globally other than the global depression of the 1920s and 30s. So as a result, I mentioned the emerging markets is a good area that we have placed a very significant priority. 80% of our production volume, as I described, goes to those markets. We were growing exponentially in Russia, Central Eastern Europe, other parts of Asia, South America. As those economies have all been impacted, in addition to North America and Western Europe, we have seen a significant fall off in potential automotive demand and forecast. As a result, there's significant risk. Actually, one of the things, the approaches we've taken, in addition to pursuing joint venture partners and local business partners, I describe that as either required by government regulations or local content. That helps us minimize some of the risk. You saw the one map where we have all these plants sprinkled between, the CIS countries, Central Europe, etc. Most of those are either joint ventures or contract assembly, where we provide the kits, those ventures pay us, but then they're responsible for the assembly of the product, etc. So some interesting, unique business relationships have actually been part of our business strategy. And because of this global crisis that has impacted, it has somewhat mitigated our exposure. But in terms of how quickly some of these markets will rebound, I'm sure you've had a lot of discussion as to when do we think the developed markets are going to rebound. Some of the emerging markets have been impacted quite substantially. The Russian market, for example, I think the stock market in Russia has fallen 75%. Most of us are concerned about the stock market either in Europe or North America and the significant fall-off. But you can see how that is going to ripple through the Russian economy. And now, what is the outlook for Russia? So, yes, this is having a major impact. We are recalibrating our business plans. And in some cases, we've had to throttle back some of the things we wanted to do. But we'll be very quick because we believe we're well positioned for when the economies pick back up. Good question. Yes?
How much of a return to profitability for GM would you say depends on revising the product and brand strategy versus changing the fundamental structure of the company or the way that business is done? Which of those would you say is the more important direction to pursue in terms of becoming a profitable company?
I've described here in very simple form 4 key priority areas of product, the brands, the emerging markets, and the advanced technology. We are pursuing all of those, and we believe we're on the right track with each one of those and in combination. One of the real issues that we're wrestling with is, as part of the submission to the U.S. government, the U.S. government asked that we provide a plan that is long-term sustainable. We have some costs at GM that are outside of these areas. One of the major areas is health care that we provide to our employees that have been part of union negotiations. We cannot unilaterally stop paying health care. This health care restructuring plan is an item that has been a topic of a lot of negotiations with the unions, and most recently with the new administration in Washington. And that health care fund that GM is obligated to support for the union-represented employees has got to be part of the solution. But it's independent of what I call the business strategy. This is an additional legacy cost that, because of the structure of our industry, the union contracts, is different than our competitors outside of North America. The Toyotas, the Hondas, they don't have this healthcare cost structure that we have. The other key element of the restructuring plan requires our bondholders to participate in a debt-to-equity swap, to take about $27 billion of current debt on our balance sheet and convert it to only about $9 billion of debt approximately 30%, and to take stock or equity in exchange. Right now, we're in very active negotiations with the bondholders. And again, this is independent of the business strategy, but these two areas, resolving the healthcare cost structure that we are currently responsible for because of the union issues over the past 40, 50 years, and this issue of the significant amount of debt that we have. We've got to address those two issues in order to proceed through the review process with the U.S. government. So my answer is we believe the strategies we have are demonstrating they're working in terms of the product, our performance in emerging markets. We've addressed our basic cost structure that we can control. However, these other two areas are somewhat dependent on getting support from our other stakeholders as well as the U.S. government to determine how to find a solution. Thank you. Yes?
So one thing you showed was that map that showed where each type of car was developed, and the thing that was missing from that was hybrids and the advanced fuel cars. I'm curious if all of that is concentrated in the U.S. or if each office develops their own. And then a related sort of cultural question is, aside from the structure of where hybrids and electrics are developed, how pervasive is sort of the Lett's attitude that climate change isn't a real issue to deal with through the rest of the company, or is he not representative of GM?
Okay. What I described was the basic vehicle architectures which cover the global segments, from many small, mid-sized cars, crossovers. The advanced propulsion technology is being developed centrally, locally, here in North America. Now, we do have labs in Europe, as well as we have a link with Asia, but the central development, or the development of those technologies is here within North America. GM just announced that in the area of battery development, we are opening up a new battery development lab in Michigan. We've also indicated a partnership with a local university, University of Michigan, in Michigan, to train battery engineers and put a curriculum together in terms of technology in this area. So we are developing that technology currently locally. Now, the connection to Korea is that LG Chem, based in Korea, one of our business partners, they are going to supply the battery cells. Now, in a battery pack for the electric Volt, there's about 200 of these battery cells that get assembled together into a battery pack. And the battery pack manufacturing will be in Michigan in a facility, but the actual battery cells are being developed and will be produced in Korea and actually sent to the United States for assembly into this battery pack. And then, depending on which type of vehicle this battery pack goes into, at this point, the Volt is a mid-size car. So that work is going on with the vehicle development team because it's like developing a new engine. But in this particular case, it's a new power plant that is a drivetrain. So hopefully that explains it. We have multiple vehicle development centers, as I indicated, but this advanced technology is being developed centrally within the company.
Last question, please.
Yes.
I was hoping to get your perspective on the issue between GM kind of restructuring versus actually going into bankruptcy. And my question, or I guess confusion rather, is that it looks, I guess the restructuring that's going on without the title of bankruptcy looks a lot like what I would imagine would go on under the title of bankruptcy. So I'm just a little confused as to, just wanted to get your thoughts on that and what really the difference would be, because they're having to place plants anyway, they're resizing, they're going to have to do something with their debt holders like they are doing now anyway. Mm-hmm. So how to think about that, or how the firm is thinking about that.
The question is, the restructuring that we are proceeding with, and we are well down the path, how does that compare to formal bankruptcy? We have decided, but the U.S. government is going to play a role in the ultimate decision. We have decided that restructuring the company as we are doing, in terms of fewer better products, fewer brands, fewer manufacturing locations, reduction of headcount, a resizing of the company because the corporation has fallen substantially in terms of global volume. Even though our volume is 9 million units approximately, as a share of the industry, today around the world we represent about 11%, 10 to 12% of the global industry. Here in the United States, we used to be 40%, and we're 20%. So we have to restructure and resize. We believe we can restructure, resize, as we are already doing, and continue to run the business by bringing new products to market and very aggressive marketing and sales. Bankruptcy, however, we believe, is a different scenario. In bankruptcy, especially in today's environment, there is not external funding that would be available when a company goes bankrupt, other than, because of the credit markets, other than the government. So the government would have to participate under that bankruptcy regardless versus the way we're restructuring. But the concern we have is that the automobile is the second most important and significant purchase most families make besides their home. And we believe that our revenue would fall off substantially if General Motors declared bankruptcy. Even though it might be managed bankruptcy, as some people have proposed, we think that we would see a significant fall off in sales, whether here in North America or around the world. And that revenue fall off would make it extremely difficult to stabilize the company, to restructure, and then recover. We've estimated the cost would be far in excess of the cost or the funds that we've noted we require, for example, from the U.S. government. So that's the difference. We think under bankruptcy there'd be a significant risk to our revenue, and then we believe that we're not sure that we could actually survive and come out anywhere near the type of company that I've described here for you today. With that, I think I do need to close. Again, I can only tell you that change is going to happen for all of you upon graduation. Hopefully my remarks today, in addition to the very fine, and thank you for that introduction, Dean Joss, I have had the opportunity, yes, I've stayed within the auto industry, and I've stayed within the corporation General Motors, but I've had the fortunate chance to really cut across all parts of the business, from product development, marketing, finance, in North America as well as overseas. And it's been a fascinating career for myself. And as we get through this period and we create this new GM, for some of you, I invite you to look at an opportunity in the auto industry. I believe there's no other industry that is so exciting when you take all the elements of product development, the marketing, the size, the financial aspects, and I'm sure you'd have a very rewarding career. Kamsahamnida.